It's time to do some work on the slats for the headboard and the tailboard. And I've already done the big one for the headboard. It's this, and I'm very pleased with it. It's got a little bit of character. It's quite decently book matched. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. And the bit that's doesn't mirror very well is going to be hidden down behind the mattress, so that's all right. It's been a lot of work to make this. The wood wasn't thick enough to just resaw it down the middle and open it up and get a piece this thick. So I did that anyway, and I ended up with something that was only about 8mm thick, which I didn't think was thick enough. So I've got the book matched bit on the front, and I've got some balance on the back to make up the thickness. And this is finished at about 12mm, half an inch. And I'm very pleased with it. When that's polished, that's going to look lovely, absolutely lovely. And it's flat, and it's not twisted, not inwined. And I'm very pleased with the end result there. I need to look after that. The smaller piece, that's also got some book match on the front. Not you'll see it because the room's so small, you can't step back from the bed enough to take a good look at the bottom end. But nevertheless, and I've put some tape on it so that it doesn't move in the bag. That did move in the bag, and it took me, some time, and I lost about 5mm, good 5mm, straightening it up again. It's still bigger than what I originally drew, so the size is not a problem, but it was just more work. So I'm going to try and avoid that by hinging these together so that they can't slide. So I need to get some glue on here and then get it stuck, shoved into the bag and evacuated. See you in a bit. I've spent several days prepping timber for the vertical slats, and they're all different widths, but they follow a particular series. They follow the Fibonacci series. So I've started with my center slat, which is 194mm wide it's come out at, and I'm very pleased with the way this has come out. It's book matched. The wood wasn't thick enough to just get a book match out of and finish it to half an inch. So there's two layers actually glued together. So that's my center one, and then if you divide that by 1.618, which is the Fibonacci number, you get the next slat, which is this one, and then divide that by 1.618 and you get the next one, and so on and so forth, all the way across the bed until you get to the outside of the bed, which is only 28mm. Now, I did make a coffee table once where the slats underneath followed Fibonacci, and I also made the gaps between them follow Fibonacci, and that was overkill. I was not very happy with it afterwards. Of course, too late to do anything about it. But so the gaps between these are going to be constant, and I think that's going to look really good. I've modelled it up on SketchUp, and I'm happy with what it looks like. So this is going to be put away safely until I've made the crest rail, and that'll be the next thing to mark and cut out. It's time to mark out the curves for the crest rails. So I've got my two boards here, one for the tailboard and one for the headboard. And there's a whole video on how to do this. I'll put a link to it up here somewhere. But it's very simple. I need a block to run against at the end of the arc. So in this case, that's the ends of the board. And I need to mark the bulge point here, which is 40mm in. And then a couple of long sticks go from that point to the bulge point, and from that point also to the bulge point, so they cross in the middle. And then a bit of glue in there and a clamp. And we're going to have a cup of tea. Now I've just got to cut off the spare where they overlap. There. And the same on the other side. There we go. And I've already made a little tiny notch right where they cross. And that's to put my pencil in. That's very nice, Steve. Very nice. Well, not perfect, but not bad. Not bad for one eye at all. Well, let's see how symmetrical it is. That's the original position of the offcut. And you can see the saw line is nice and even. And if we turn it over, let's see how close we are. Well, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. It's nearly touching here and there's a bigger gap here. And I can see the pencil line is still left a bit here, whereas I can barely see it there. But that's pretty good actually. At this stage, that's fine. I can take a bit much more out of there with a compass plane or a spoke shave, and this is going to have a cap on it anyway. So very pleased with that indeed. I have got a little bit of a problem which needs addressing. The two bottom cross rails and one of the crest rails are 24mm thick, and it's a nice chunky thickness. But one of my crest rails is only 21, barely 21, and in fact there's still a bit of a rough patch on it which I've got to deal with, so it might end up being only 20 by the time I finish that, and that looks a bit skinny, to be honest. And it's quite easy to see the difference between the two. So I have decided to make them look identical even though they're different thicknesses. And I'm going to do that with a bit of a cap on the curve like this. And then I'll be able to use my offcuts as a core, glue it in place. I'm going to make the one for the 24mm one first and route a groove on the underside to fit the 24mm crest rail. And then when I've done that and I've got that right, I am going to keep the cutter in the same place for that last cut and make that the first cut on my thinner board, and then just work backwards until it fits. And that way they will both fit their respective crest rails, even though they're different, but they will look the same. So I think that's a really good fix actually for that. So this is work that needs to be done on the router table over there. Oh, that's going to do very nicely. So move the fence back a bit now and keep going until it fits. I don't have a bullnose cutter the right size for this, but I do have a 4mm roundover, so I can take 2 passes to create the same shape. It's not exactly right,
but close enough to be sorted out with a bit of sandpaper.
You can see now how these two are different. This one is central, and this one, the groove is narrower. So this piece here is wider than that piece there. But this will be at the back of the crest rail. So they will both look identical. And I'm very pleased with that. And when that's glued in place and there, that is going to look blooming marvellous. Yes, I'm quite pleased with that. The next job is to cut a lot of mortise and tenon joinery to join the slats to the crest rail and the bottom rail. And to do that, I'm using this jig. It just fits over my bench dogs and it gives me something to push against. So there's an adjustable stop and I can put my workpiece on there, for example. Now, normally I would have it hanging over the end so that I make sure that I'm resting on the top. But there is a problem with this, and that is that the fence will not go down far enough to reach the centre of my 12mm slats. There's a 12mm step on this, but the fence doesn't actually quite meet it. So the slots aren't slap bang in the middle. So I'm going to get rid of the fence and I'm going to use the base as the reference surface instead. The cutter, the centre of the cutter, is 10mm above the base, and I want it to be 6mm above the base. So I've got a couple of 4mm spacers. They will go underneath the workpiece, and then I can simply make the cut. All the slots, nearly all the slots, are on waggle setting 1 for these. The only difference is that the next to the smallest one, these, I've increased the size of that to waggle setting 2 because there's not enough room to get 2 tenons in there, and I want it to be, you know, as big as possible, really. And then when I come to do the crest rail and so on, all those slots will be one size bigger than the corresponding tenon on here. So there's a little bit of adjustment room. The centre one will be single waggle, so that will be a fixed location in the middle, and then all the others, there will be a little bit of wiggle room so that I can get the spacings exactly right. So I've done all my short ones. The long ones are too long for my jig, so I need to take the stop out like that, put my workpiece in like that, and then find a way of holding it down like that. And then I can push against that and it's not going to go anywhere. And that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is a very nice row of mortises, and it's pretty much in the middle. I'm very pleased indeed with that. So I'm just going to do the other 3. I'm using a French product that I've never tried before. This is Les Frères Nordin, Paris, Ébéniste, which is a cabinet maker, restaurateur, restorers presumably. It's water-based, so it's raising the grain, and I can feel that actually while I'm putting it on. But with any stain or any finish really, one of the things that it shows you is all the imperfections in your surface. And here I've got a bit in this area and on this side where I've not sanded properly, I've still got machine marks. So once this particular piece is dry, I'm going to have to do quite a bit of sanding to get rid of those, and then stain it again. But the colour's fine. It's a bit dark, but I think that'll lighten up. I might go over it with some thinners or something like that to just get rid of the excess before I put the oil on.
Gluing up is stressful at the best of times, let alone when trying to film it, when it's 35 Celsius outside and even 25 Celsius in the workshop, with the glue going off by the second. So you'll have to make do with some photographs. The spaces between the slats are all the same-ish, 61.5 millimeters. But the tolerance and the waggle settings makes that relatively easy to achieve. Then the legs get glued on, remembering to keep everything square with my square of Thales, of course, and Bob's your uncle.
There's one bit of gluing up I will let you watch. There we go. Well, this seems to have come together all of a sudden. The frames are done, the headboard and tailboard are done, and I've made a couple of brackets like this to support a centerboard, which in turn will support the inside edges of the slatted base. Because when I bought it, I ordered 2 meters long by 1400. And I didn't appreciate that it came as 2 meters by 700 and 2 lots of them. So we need something to support those inside edges. So that's being glued up over there. These are the brackets. They're going to go on the inside face like that, but I don't know exactly where yet. I could calculate it, but the easiest thing to do is to get the bed put together in situ and then fit these when it's all together, and then I'll know exactly where it's got to be for the side rails and the centerboard to be in line. So let's get it upstairs and see what it looks like.
This is a real photograph of the first proper assembly of the bed. And then, with a bit of help from artificial intelligence, this is what it looks like in a bedroom. Sadly, it's not my bedroom.
This has been a long project. 20 years ago, I'd have had a bed like this made in a couple of weeks. Instead, this has taken 2.5 months. I'm just not as productive as I used to be. There've been a few low points, and getting the mortises in the wrong place was definitely the worst of them. But now that it's finished, I'm actually very pleased with it. The slats have come out superbly. Even the finish isn't bad. It's a lot better than it was a fortnight ago. And the legs, you cannot tell that they're not solid oak. I'm very pleased indeed with that. So if you enjoyed watching it, then please give it a thumbs up and ring the bell so that you get a notification the next time I upload a video. And it all helps to keep the channel going. Thank you very much indeed. Until the next time, sleep tight. Cheerio.